Welcome to another episode of the MXGP Podcast Show on Vital MX. Yet another triple header has begun with round 8 in Teutschenthal, Germany. And as per normal, Teutschenthal has delivered some upset, some disappointment. But is it all the track's fault? We will get into that on this episode, as well as all that happened on the slick, rutty hardpack. We will even have EMX 250 talk for the first time ever. So a lot to look forward to on this episode.
Will we?
We should probably talk about the American.
Right.
Okay. We'll just literally give him a well done and we'll move on. It's fine. Not too much to look forward to, but now I've blown the clickbait part of the podcast. Of course, we can talk about all of this because of the support from our valued partners at Holosport, All Balls Racing and EVS. A lot of crashes this weekend, and a lot of people who will now remember the crashes that they had at Teutschenthal. You too may remember the crashes and falls that you had and the levers you destroyed because of that. Well, that's no longer a problem. Holosport released the Pivot Unbreakable levers, a lever set that never breaks. If you fall, they can be bent back to their original shape. Easy as that. And I'm already above my quota by getting that in early, so well done to me. And I'm joined by Paddock Pass podcast man who really enjoys slick tyres. It's Adam Wheeler. How's it going?
Hey, Lewis. All right, a little tired. MotoGP back-to-backs are somewhat more exhausting, I can say, than motocross, just by virtue of the 4 to 5 day schedule. So whack 2 of them in, consecutive weekends, and there's little room for anything else. But I don't want to grumble. It was a good Grand Prix in Mugello, and I actually bumped into Alessandro Lupino, who was checking out MotoGP for the first time, and he dropped a few little crumbs about Ducati's project and how things are faring over there. So maybe we can talk about it later.
I should have asked you this beforehand, so without giving anything away, do you want to talk about the other item?
The other item?
The other item that you texted me last week and got clarification on.
Oh, don't ask me what happened last week. I'm struggling to remember what happened 2 days ago.
The categoric no that you got.
Ah, right. Okay. What the various powers that be might be having some dialogue over possible purchases. No, not really, because there's not enough foundation to it yet. So this is terrible podcasting, but if there is any news, then we'll try and inform listeners in the next show.
Okay. I just presume that you would know exactly what I was talking about as soon as I said that, but never mind. So Teutschenthal, a historic track. It's been around probably longer than I've been alive, certainly since I've had consciousness. It's good, but it keeps finding itself in these situations where it comes under fire, as we discussed famously at the end of 2015. In front, or Youthstream, as it was then, released a calendar with TBC next to Germany because that was a warning shot for them to get their act together. They did, but yet these issues keep arising. We had injuries to Paul Jonas, Henry Jacobi, and others at the weekend. Is it the track's fault? I honestly think my gut feeling is no, but then my other gut feeling is where there's smoke, there's fire.
Why do you think the track is good, first of all?
Well, that was just me being nice. Throw them a bone. It's all right.
No, I mean, you've been there enough years. I mean, what did you like about going to the German Grand Prix? Because you're right, it has been problematic, and it's been problematic going back a good few years. I can remember sort of a spate of injuries, like Andrea Bartolini finished the 500cc world champion 1999, I think. I might get my dates wrong now. Yeah, I mean, he ended his career there with a back injury. Mark de Ruver as well, fractured some vertebra, because it just used to be much faster, much more sort of hard-packed, blue groove than it sort of is these days. I think they've made considerable efforts to try and improve it and make it slower and safer. But yeah, it does seem to, cause problems. Everything from examples off the top of my head. Jeffrey Hurling's breaking his neck. Hurling's has also broken his collarbone there. Max Nagel, one of the most popular German riders in recent years, aside from Ken Roczen, broke, I think, a collarbone or an arm while he was leading the MXGP World Championship. I want to say 2015.
Yeah, qualifying.
So race. It's been like a bit of a hotbed of not only accident but incident. And Roxon, I think, went back and did a wildcard appearance after his first year in the US. I think he rode a 350 in the Premier class, got on the podium, didn't beat Tony Cairoli, I think, from memory. You have to check. But yeah, it's been one of those places, Lewis. I mean, the best we've ever seen it, I think, was for the Motocross of Nations. So was it 2013? And it's a shame that the powers that be that control racing and control the circuit can't sort of bring that level of prep to the track every year for it.
Yeah, Stephen Sword, another one whose career was altered quite drastically because of Teutschenthal. Back to the original point about why I enjoy it, probably because of the history and the fact that it's a landmark in MXGP. So it's like, oh, I'm at Teutschenthal. Just has a bit of a ring to it as opposed to saying I'm at Kegums. Although Kegums is quickly getting to that point of notoriety. If it went away, I do believe that people would be up in arms. First of all, I don't believe it goes away. I just don't. Germany is a massive market. There aren't that many options in Germany as far as I know. Otherwise, I do genuinely believe we would be exploring them. And 2013, when Teutschenthal hosted the Nations, we had to go to the Lausitzring because there was not another motocross track as an option. So for those reasons, I think it's there. But I do believe the gripes and the complaints are valid. I just don't believe that much more can be done to fix those.
Yeah, good shout. I mean, it's an ever present on the calendar, and you mentioned the history. I think it's going back to the mid 1970s. In fact, I think it might have even been a holder of a Grand Prix of Germany before unification, of course. So it might have been labeled East Germany. I don't think it's quite far enough in the West to have carried that tag. I'll have to get my history. I wrote a history about it. I have to I perhaps should have looked at it before we did this podcast, but yeah, I mean, it's well attended, Lewis. I mean, a little bit, the Germans go mad for their bike racing. I mean, we tend to think of bike racing hungry, mad people like the Spanish or the Italians or the French, but year upon year, the MotoGP round of in Germany in Sachsenring is sold out. I mean, it's well over sort of 150,000 people there. It has been historically as well a very popular place for racing. And Teutschenthal also has traditionally a decent crowd, even if the weather's quite crap. And as a track itself, it's kind of sunk in a little bit of a valley setting, and it's open. It's very sort of open plain on top. So the wind does tend to rip through there, and you do get a variance of weather conditions. But I think it's just a consequence, really, of the modern era, four strokes being so good and so fast, the track being so tight. And despite the efforts of the club to try and make it more modern to suit, modern dirt bikes, it's just feels a little bit too forced. It's like you say, people will be up in arms because it's the old school. It's the definition of an old school motocross track. But I still think we've had conversations and we've written stories before saying, has MXGP outgrown venues or tracks like Torkessel? And I still think it's valid.
As I said, I do not believe that anything will change. But before we go any further, let's stick with this theme and just do a bit of housekeeping. Paul Jonas is out likely for the rest of the year with arm, shoulder issues, a multitude of things, heartbreaking. And this was in the first corner. So first corner crashes can happen anywhere. I don't really know if you can blame Teutschenthal for that. There was some questionable actions that took place after the crash. There's stuff about that online. You can find it. Hurling's shared it on his Instagram story. He's really become the voice of the riders, you could say, in his old age, the wise old man. So yeah, that's going on. But besides the drama, sucks for Paul's. He was a revelation this year, really re-establishing himself as a top 450 rider. Obviously won that GP. I just hope that in 4 weeks' time, recency bias hasn't taken over and we've all forgotten what he did in the first half of this year, because he deserves kudos. Despite the fact that he will be inactive.
He did the one thing that we asked him not to do, and that was to stay healthy, make it to the end of the championship, and just his luck has struck again. Like you say, it is a little bit heartbreaking. Of course, you feel bad for Tim Mathis and the whole of the standing construct team because Alberto Ferrato had a pretty serious injury preseason as well. And it's just a classic example of how crap the sport can be when it sort of whacks, two likable and big characters in MXGP like this.
Yeah, I don't know when Ferrato's going to be back, but he's back on a bike, so maybe soon. I would imagine that Bajora will be too soon, but yeah, I don't know what Standing will be doing in the interim. You know what's weird? And maybe this is going to reveal that I'm just a creep. So it's early in the morning as I record this. I had a dream last night, not to steal Martin Luther King's bit. I had a dream. I was in Latvia. Gautier Paulin was filling in for Jonas. Don't ask me why that was on my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, why Gautier? Why not Clement de Sale or?
I don't know. Honestly, the weirdest, and it was so vivid as well. It was raining, which seems to be par for the course for MXGP this year. For some reason, the airport car park was in Disneyland. And when I was walking around trying to find my car, I ran into Calvin Vlanderen, and then I offered him a ride to his car, and then I ran over a policeman who was walking.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and then I woke up because obviously at that point it got so serious that I felt the need to wake up and make sure that I'm not going to jail. Anyway,
so you're not only a creep, you're a criminal.
Yeah, exactly. A lot happened. This is my mind. This will answer a lot of questions that people have. Anyway,
well, Lewis, no, before you move on, let's just talk a little bit about the subject of Paul's injury, because I mean, it was just an unfortunate case, as people have seen on social media, where he was just misdiagnosed, and it's a really tricky one to comment on because, unless you're there seeing what's going on, I mean, of course, everybody can make a mistake, and, that includes medical experts and people with decades of experience in dealing with paramedic situations and accidents like this. But it turns out that what was thought to be a dislocated shoulder was actually a fractured shoulder blade, and he was just given the wrong course of treatment initially, and this is why we saw some of the comments on social media. But I don't think we can weigh in too heavily on that, because of course the medical expert and the doctors and the whole setup that the AFM have there are usually pretty spot on, and it's you can't really hammer or condemn somebody for just making an error of judgment, even though it sucks, really badly for Paul's.
Yeah, it sounds like there was some errors made with Jacoby as well. Jacoby, from what I understand, has broken his jaw, lost some teeth, a lot of facial injuries. He crashed in pit lane, which is a new.
How is that possible?
I don't know, but that opens up a new can of worms of like health and safety for MXGP, because now, do we have to like prep pit lane, water pit lane?
I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe access has to be more tightly controlled. Also, you can't enforce it, but should there be some sort of speed limit? I don't know. How on earth could you measure that though? I mean, could you only be you could still throttle through there if you're in second gear or something, but maybe somebody who, I gather there's going to be an official in pit lane throughout the race. Maybe they can judge if someone's using, I don't know, dangerous or hazardous behavior when they're pitting, and apply a fine. But then that's something that's going to be contested if there's no hard evidence. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty severe injury for the German rider, and I'm just curious as to how it happened.
Yeah, and weird because it's one of like, there's never a camera on pit lane, so no one will see it unless for the few people who were in pit lane and not watching the race but had their back to the action, which those are few and far between. But to steal a line from the previous podcast, this is where I'm at. Mistakes were made in Germany, mistakes that are probably unacceptable in a sport as elite as this, like we are a world championship. So, and again, to reiterate what I said in the previous podcast, I don't believe these are anything to do with in front at all. They have 0% of the blame. This is an FIM issue. And yeah, the FIM have got to get ahead of this. They've got to release a statement. They've got to tackle it head on. They've got to show transparency, accountability. They just have to make sure that they show that they care. Because ultimately, I am of the opinion that all anyone wants is that, a bit of recognition. Even people who are scorned, if they get a bit of recognition, they can feel a little, a little lighter, a little better about the situation. And I believe that's Jeffrey's big not agenda. Jeffrey's speech here, and has been the last 2 weeks, is that money is going ahead of safety of the riders. It's what he put on Instagram again. So just like stop that. Acknowledge it in a statement and say, like, we understand we made mistakes. We want this to be the best it can be. We are always learning despite our years and years of experience. These are the measures that we aim to take to make sure this does not happen again.
We talked about riders' unions and stuff in the past, and if Herlings is banging this drum, then he has to kind of keep on banging it. You can't just like put it down when he has a great Grand Prix in Latvia and wins, and then doesn't have any comment at all whatsoever about the entry lists or the track preparation or whatever else. I think if you head down this path, otherwise you just look like somebody who's complaining when, maybe the situation isn't suiting you. I mean, if Jeffrey does want to become a voice for the riders or for the sport, then that's great. I think people should be speaking up on issues that are perhaps not so obvious to everybody, that can't see behind the scenes. But I think you're right. It would be good to have, as we said before, more transparency, or at least more willingness to react to potential problems, whether that does mean extra safety efforts or an explanation towards safety efforts, some sort of, I don't know, memo, some sort of mission statement or whatever, just to prove that MXGP is trying to get better. But it's just a shame that, I mean, is part of these problems being caused by severe weather conditions to tracks that just have so much history. I mean, also, let's not forget that the clubs running these events have a hell of a lot of experience in a myriad of conditions. I mean, sometimes Teutschenthal is baking in sunshine. It's being watered between motos, and watering was always one of the sore points in Germany in this particular venue. And it's been dusty, it's been extremely windy there, and the weather building up into this Grand Prix was horrific. I think some riders were actually praising the track prep, trying to save it to stop it from being a swamp. But Tilkessel's always been very narrow, very one-liney, and there's never really much you can do about that.
Yeah, it's funny that all of these issues seem to happen at the same time every year. It's like we have just 2 weeks of utter chaos, and then we all move on until the next year when it happens again. There has to be a meeting there. Honestly, not to go back to this again, but when the Monday after Erne in 2022, when the riders got an email saying we are going to have a meeting with you, the riders were like over the moon, because it goes back to what I said, like just some acknowledgement was enough to kind of settle some qualms. So they've just got to like do that. Don't be so afraid. I feel like in the past, maybe In Front and the FIM have been the villains in the paddock, and a lot of people have been out to get them. I don't know, but I really don't believe that is the situation anymore. I believe it's much more harmonious, and these conversations can be opened up without a fear of them getting nasty or going over the line.
Yeah, you're right. All it needs is just a bit of dialogue, I think. And the fact that this dialogue is happening, somebody to say something, and not to be some sort of whingy post on Instagram. That has to be, I think, a little bit of the way forward.
Anyway,
but like you say, Lewis, we're heading on to Kegums next, which is a very fast kind of, everyone says it's sandy, but it's not really. It's just very loose topsoil. And if it hasn't been raining in the build up to that Grand Prix, then that sort of topsoil can get very thin or very shallow, and underneath it's pretty edgy and hard, and it's treacherous as well. And then onto Majora, which could either be soaking wet again or under brilliant sunshine. But yes, it seems like a moment in MXGP where we were talking recently about it potentially being a 2021 sort of situation, but it's been overshadowed by just some injuries and incidents, like we said earlier.
Are we done with that? On with the racing?
Yeah, on with the racing.
It is completely overlooked. Jorge Prado is undefeated in dry GPs. That is completely overlooked, and that is an incredible statement, an absolutely incredible statement.
Yeah, but would you say Germany was a dry GP?
Yeah, but even so,
really,
but even if you count that as wet, he's still undefeated in dry GPs. because that doesn't change the fact, it just adds weight to the wet column. That underlines how great Prado's been, and obviously it's very close. Geyser is nipping at his heels. Arguably the better rider in Teutschenthal, Moto2 for sure. Maybe
I would say, Teutschenthal. I would say it's been one of Tim's better tracks over the years. It's sort of the kind of terrain that he thrives on as well. And it's also been a great track for HRC, Lewis, and Honda. Don't forget, I mean, Brian Jorgensen, I think, took his only sort of Premier Class win back in 2004. And I think Evgeny Bobryshev as well gave sort of the new look Honda team. I think it's sure it was his first GP win or
his
maybe
only
his
GP
second
win as well.
Oh, his sole one, right? Okay.
Yeah, and they both went 1-1. Like really weird. History repeating itself.
Yeah, so it's been a good track for Honda, and it was curious that Tim, as well as Jeffrey, made comments about arm pump on Saturday. That seemed to be a bit of a major issue for both of them. And again, that's just reflective again of the track, I think. Just how sort of bumpy and rutty it gets. And anyone who saw the footage, it's extremely limiting. And Jorge Prado, with his propensity for excellent starts, meant he was always going to be near the front of the pack. And when you do that at Teutschenthal, it's almost a little bit like kind of a Monaco of F1. So tricky to pass. And with the extra sort of slippery terrain, it's basically it's the recipe for success, isn't it?
Do you feel like, to an extent, Prado's dominance, incredible results, incredible run is overlooked because he gets such great starts? It feels like more of a foregone conclusion. It lacks the wow power.
But don't you think great starts is, especially on some GP tracks like Torkessel, is part of the job? You know, I mean, he must go there thinking, look at it. He must be rubbing his hands thinking, look at the state of this today. All I have to do is get out front and I've got half the race in my pocket. I mean, don't you think that's something that should be kind of celebrated or exalted?
Yeah, but for whatever, like, I do believe that is a contributing factor to Prado's dominance being overlooked somewhat. Or maybe I'm just imagining that it's being overlooked. I don't know, but I definitely feel like even myself, until I actually put the pieces of the puzzle together and realized he's actually undefeated in dry GPs, I was like, oh yeah, I just feel like, I don't feel like we're really on this.
Well, if you put Prado starts together with, say, Hurlings's relentless raw speed and Geiger's strength, then you would have the ultimate MXGP robot, wouldn't you? I mean, that would be an unbeatable package. And I think it's kind of endearing, actually, that Jorge has, this brilliant skill, technique anyway, and the ability to start. And he also has vulnerabilities. Like suddenly you have very random GPs where he's off the pace, say like in Portugal, or he's not famed for being able to get his elbows out and have like a real sort of aggressive hard fight with someone. I mean, behind the sort of the good boy looks and the smiles, I think there is a very ruthless racer in there. He's very much focused on him and what he can do. And there's a mentality that doesn't always come out because he has that boyish look. But, I think you underrate him at his peril, because how many races does he win in the first couple of laps?
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, if you're Tim Geiser, who is every bit as fast as Prado, you're kind of facing an impossible task, because if you're going to, similar to Chase and Jet in Pro Motocross, if you're going to start 2 positions behind him in every race, if you're that similar and you're that close, it's very hard to make that difference.
Well, actually, Lewis, I'm going to cut across you there, and it's even more pertinent for Jeffrey Hurlings. Like in the second moto in Germany, I think he was P2 coming over that jump where he broke his collarbone a few years ago, went into the curve where he broke his neck last year. And I thought, well, here we go. I mean, this is chase down Prado and make it happen. But it just, he had to start on that occasion, but doesn't quite have that sort of rapier intensity to go with Prado and let it hang out at the moment. So Hurlings, as we know, is a work in progress, but to be honest, I think if we get, what was that? It was round 8 of the championship. If we get to round 14, 15, and he's starting to clock up serial moto wins and grab points on the board and ends up winning this thing by 3 points through a late season surge of the typical Hurlings form, then it would have been a masterstroke of a season, because he would have just built things up, avoided injury, and made it happen.
Do you recall the mistake that Hurlings made in the second moto at the bottom of the valley before you kind of come up and rejoin the start straight. It was minor where the back end kind of kicked out in a rut. That gave me flashbacks to his crash in Teutschenthal last year. And had it been in a faster section, I genuinely believe it would have resulted in the same mistake. It was just lucky that it was in a slow speed section, but it was like eerily similar. And again, any other rider makes that mistake, I go, eh. But in the moment, I was like out of my chair, like, oh no, here we go.
Did you think? Do you think Geiger should have put more pressure on Prado as well? I mean, maybe do you think you left a little bit disappointed from this Grand Prix?
I believe that if you're Geiser, you are almost, this sounds bad, but permanently disappointed in these cases because you're like, I could have won and I should have won, but I didn't get the start. But I got a good start, but it just wasn't a great start, and I don't know how to make the great start to beat Prado. Like, I believe it's a frustrating exercise because you are essentially beating your head against a wall because you're like, I have all of the pieces of the puzzle are there. I'm even getting good starts. Like, if Prado wasn't in the class, we would be calling Geiser maybe the most consistent starter, or certainly one of them. So it's almost like he should be in a better position than he is, but this Prado guy is just so perfect.
Well, we can't ignore the fact that he's right there for the red plate. And, you know, he has the most podiums out of everybody this year. I think it's quite damning that he's led something like maybe a quarter of the laps that Prado's led. And he's the next best rider in that statistic. But the victories just stand out. I mean, he's only won one Grand Prix. And, you know, that's maybe some arithmetic that he's going to have to swap around a little bit if he's going to try and sort of grab the championship by the neck, if you like. But, you know, Tim, as well, we've been, you know, speaking so much about Hurlings on this podcast, Lewis, about how he has to adopt a different strategy to make it through the championship and make this thing work. But maybe Guy's just doing the same thing, you know. I mean, after that big FIMA break last year, he's also just feeling his way, again, making consistency his main attribute. And from that point of view, he's having a great season so far.
I roll at your statement in there, by the way.
Why? About what?
About he's got one GP win this year. I roll.
Why? Am I off?
No, like, you know, Febvre has one GP win this year, in my mind. He has
Right.
0.5 of a GP win this year. I'll give him that.
Right, okay.
I
see what you mean.
I can't sit here and say one GP win this year with like seriousness.
Well, that's what it says in the books, you know.
Yeah,
that's what it says in the chart. So he won the GP of France, like it or not. But yeah, I mean, when Prado's got 6 and Febvre's got 1 and, you know, Geiger's got 1, we've only got 3 winners after almost halfway through the season. That feels a little bit like a short change.
It's not representative of how incredible this is because I believe it's now 5 weekends in succession where the red plate has changed hands, which is I'm not sure if that's ever happened at any point. Even 2021, I don't recall it being like that. It's really yo-yoing between Prado and Geiser, which is actually probably helping Hurlings to an extent because it's stopping one rider from just building points on him.
I don't know, because I mean, they are just racking up the podiums and the points. And, you know, if Jeffrey's going to keep filling the third step or the second step at the most, then, you know, I think he's getting, I think the fact that he hasn't won yet is starting to play on his mind a little bit, just listening to post-race quotes. You know, but maybe Latvia's the time when he's gonna stop sort of, I don't want to say the slump, but it's been over a year now since he won a Grand Prix, which is very sort of unusual for Jeffrey when he's actually been competing for quite a bit. And it's just a real shame that Romain Febvre is, you know, lost a lot of points in Germany, Lewis.
Well, how about this for a stat? This is now the longest that Hurlings has gone without winning a GP as far as active races go. Before now, it was 5 rounds at the start of 2017, and we're now at 8 in a row without him winning, which is a testament to his career and his legacy and how amazing he's been, but also a testament to how this isn't normal for Hurlings.
Yeah, in 2017, he was a rookie in the Premier class on the 450. Came in with a broken hand and also, by his own admittance, underestimated the demands of the class and also his rivals. So, yeah, It's but he's been a different rider than what we've been used to. I mean, the 2018 Jeffrey Herlings is Jesus, it was like 6 years ago. I mean, to have that kind of prolific pace, and especially with the level of people like Geiger and Prado and Febvre, and even some surprise figures like Jeremy Sewer, I still think there's more to come from him as well. It's not like a dominance anymore.
Uh, a lot of pressure on Hurlings coming into Latvia. You think? I feel like we are all going to be like this is where it starts, and if he goes 4-2, etc., then maybe that'll be the biggest alarm bell of them all.
Yes, I think the pressure, if anything, is starting to ramp up on both Prado and Geiger because, if either of them drops the ball or has a weekend like Romain had in Germany, then that's going to make a big, big dent in the championship. And it seems ridiculous to say with 11 rounds, 10 rounds to go. But, at the moment, you just can't afford to give away those kind of points. I think Hurlings is almost 50 points behind, maybe a bit more. And it just goes to show that, the races rack off, the positions don't change that much. The bikes are behaving themselves largely. That's another area where Hurlings has had some bad luck this year. But you would assume that also Geiger and Prado are going to have their own technical hiccups at some point. Hurlings has to be in a position to capitalize on that and get the points back. But I said it before, and I've sort of been teeing you up to talk about it, but you keep ignoring it. Romain Febvre's injury was still the thumb thing from France, right?
Yeah, I'm so confused because he injured it on Saturday in France, then won the GP, but then somehow within 2 weeks, it didn't get better, so much so that he now can't race. But that's a weird timeline.
But also, that could be a classic motocross thing where he might have heard it worse training or doing something else, and nobody really knows. He tried to ride at Germany, but the writing had been on the wall already. Transparency.
I just presumed adrenaline got it done in France, and it was so fresh for maybe like bruising hadn't come out yet, and it was still
painkillers.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't honestly, after the way that he performed in France, I kind of wrote off the injury and was like, oh, he'll be fine. I mean, even so, he was obviously struggling in the practice sessions at Teutschenthal, but then he rebounded well in the qualifying race to finish in third. Yeah, so like again, the timeline is incredibly difficult to follow and understand what's happening. Third in the qualifying race, and then the next day unable to do more than a couple of laps. Weird. So Hurlings is 66 points down, and Febvre is
66.
Febvre is oh my 66 plus 9 is 75.
Yeah.
So Febvre's even like in my mind, there's no way Febvre races Latvia because it doesn't. If it's gotten worse, it's not getting better now, is it? Like that's unless this timeline is really skew with.
It's the worst time to happen, right at the beginning of a triple header as well. It's the same with Jonas too. Right before his home GP.
Yeah, and especially a year where he realistically could have been on the podium at his home GP. I'd imagine the Latvian local promotion has been really hot on that. So
yeah,
sad. To repeat a line that we have hammered multiple times, Calvin Vlanderen, underrated, really proving himself, making the most of the opportunity, and kind of securing the position of best of the rest, even more so. Yeah, great ride from him on a track that isn't his preferred surface, not where you typically see him shine. We know him as a sandman. So, yeah, actually, he may be a dark horse for Latvia. Maybe he gets between Hurlings, Geiser, Prado in some way and steals points.
Yeah, that was a good showing, I think, for Yamaha. And who knows when, either Jager Gertz or, Maxim Renault going to return to action. But Vlanderen's, I think, is doing more than could be asked of him. I don't think the team are expecting him to win Grand Prix, not with the form of the three riders we've already talked about, but in terms of being the best of that next tier, where you've got maybe 4 or 5 riders there battling for the best of the rest, then he did the job in Germany. So fair play to him.
Good job to Glenn Koldenoff. He's starting to find his feet and edge back to where we know he can be. Jeremy Sewer is a Swiss rider who rides a Kawasaki. I spoke to Jeremy, and that's all I can say about that. No.
You sound like Forrest Gump.
um, uh, Major
It must be getting
Saturday.
better though. He must be finding some sort of feeling with that Kawasaki by now, right? I hope.
Major, there will be a Saturdays with Sewer. Maybe it's that I'm almost unsure if this can happen, based because I'm not really sure what we can say, but we all know that Jeremy Sewer is a better rider than this. Should be having better results. He's still working hard, hasn't lost hope that he can get back to his true self. And yeah, maybe Majora is where it turns around. Been a great track for him in the past, really plays to his strengths. I'll be there, so maybe that'll give him the hope he needs.
Let's talk hypothetical for a moment. If he's not enjoying life on the Kawasaki and he decides, hey, you know what, I don't fancy green anymore, what realistically could be his options for next year?
Well, I literally had this conversation with him yesterday, so I don't know if I can answer that because it's very obvious that I know.
Okay.
So are you aware?
Okay,
so
wrong question.
There are KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas rumors going around, but I spoke to Rasmus and he said they're just rumors. But then Rasmus then also went on a rant about how much he hates rumors. So
Rasmus's team is based in Belgium, and Belgian sort of fans do love to start a rumor, has been evidenced in the past. Actually, it's probably a bit generalistic. Everybody likes a rumor, don't they? But yeah, I think some of our colleagues in GateDrop.com ran a story that the rumors were circulating that Husqvarna are not going to be racing anymore in 2025. And, Rasmus's Nestan team effectively is going to turn into an orange one. I don't really see an issue. If it does, then so what? We know that there's barely any differences between the technology. We know there are vague things, like, for example, the Husqvarnas used to run carbon subframes. They use Pro Taper bars instead of Renthal, compared to the KTM's, that is. But if one team turns from white into orange, then it's not really a massive thing, is it? There still will be the same amount of rides in the paddock. It's just how they distribute the riders, the Pira Mobility group, and continue their racing in motocross. That's the important thing. If they cull like 3 teams away from their racing program, then I think that's a bit of an alarm bell.
It's weird. So first of all, set your clock by it. Every single year in June, there will be a rumor that Husqvarna is going away. That's happened, I feel like 7 years in a row, and it ends up with absolutely no relevance. So a part of me is like, here we go again. But then I believe we both have some inside knowledge that in the past there has been at least some smoke there. I also heard, so I didn't read this story you said, but I got told, or I heard, that there was a chance Nestan would become KTM's 450 team with Hurlings and Kai. I trust Rasmus when he says, like, it's all rumors. I do trust Rasmus.
Yeah. I don't think Rasmus would go to great lengths to deny it and say it's BS if it wasn't, maybe he would just sort of palm it off in some way. But to say to you it is rumors, then that's a bit of a firm denial.
Yeah, but then also other riders who I'm talking to, all this week it's like they're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen with rides for next year now, because with the Husqvarna situation, and I'm like, well, so are you all reacted to rumors, or are you all like, is this like really something that you've all picked up and you're all adamant about? But obviously at that point, you never really know, because one rumor can go far enough Chinese whispers where by the time it circles back, it's fact. So yeah, a lot of...
Yeah, but then you have to count the number of visual bikes. I think that's the easiest way to do it. So for the KTM, let's say Pira Mobility Group, okay, the brands, you got Jeffrey Hurlings, Matteo Guadagnini, and Jorge Prado kind of representing sort of the 450, the premier class. That's their rider lineup. It is a little confusing because in the past you had 3 riders inside Red Bull KTM, which were sort of, Hurlings, Prado, and Cairoli. What a triumvirate that was. And then in the 250s and MX2, you've got obviously the Coenen brothers, the world champion Andrea Adamo, Liam Everts, and then Kai de Wolf.
Please don't forget Simon Lagenfelder.
I was getting there, as well as Simon Lagenfelder. That's quite an army of riders, both operating at their current level for the future and, for the sort of the big dogs in MXGP. So I think you need to have a look at who might be moving where, and, the color is maybe a little bit irrelevant, I would say.
I would agree with that. If there is if operations are shrunk somewhat, I don't actually know who could move on because I'm not fully up to date on this, but I believe most of the riders are in contract, no? Like Adamo's in contract.
Well, let's assume that Jorge Prado's gone.
Yep.
I mean, he's, not only changing teams, but changing brands, changing energy drinks, changing continents. If he wins the championship this year, he'll take that #1 plate with him. Won't be able to use it, but he'll just put it on the shelf. So you would assume that Gas are going to have some sort of gap there, and whether they think, right, Simon Lagenfelder gets promotion or Kai de Wolf ends up being MX2 world champion, we're going to put him in red now. Also the relevance of the teams, Lewis, I think, comes into it because, you have Rasmus's set up in Belgium, you have the Decali set up in Italy, then you have the Austrian setup, which kind of operates a bit between Austria and Belgium. It depends on which rider is going to feel good in which situation. And it's too early to say how it was going to be. But it's very curious that these rumors are surfacing. So I wonder where they come from.
You know what? Someone did say to me a couple of weeks ago, someone who would know, said to me, what if Gas just doesn't run a 450? And at the time, I felt like they were just having a conversation with me. But now I wonder if they were like tipping me off without getting themselves in trouble and actually saying it.
Yeah, I mean, why not just put 2 450s in Red Bull KTM? I mean, that was the original plan a couple of years ago before Tom Vial said, listen, I want to go to AMA. I want to ride Supercross. They were going to be the 2 premier class riders. The thing is, Everts, Adamo, and for sure the Coenen brothers all have multiple years left in the MX2 class. So there's no need for them to be pushed up. And if they are under contract, then they're not stuck. They can do another year on the 250, but then there's also some flexibility, I think. And I mean, if you've got Jeffrey Hurlings under contract for 1 more year at least, then he's your A-list performer. So you don't need to go back to that 3-rider roster of big names when you, in theory, have a guy who's going to be fighting for the top 3 and taking wins and fighting for the championship.
Yeah, because without this sounding incredibly harsh, because I do not mean it to come across that way, in reality, having Mattia Guadagnini on a Husqvarna 450 is not really doing much for the brand because Prado and Hurlings are representing Austria at the front. And we all know, everyone who's even slightly educated, even if you don't watch the races and you're just a weekend warrior, you know that the Gas is just as good as a Husqvarna. So maybe some of that plays into it. I don't know. I feel like, to your point about how there were going to be 2 KTM 450s if Vial had stayed, I really believe that KTM are very reactive to their riders, as in they have their guys, and if they like their guys and they have a long history with their guys and they're kind of part of a foundation, they will move things around to suit what those riders want. But I feel like we're getting to a point where those riders are few and far between just because of time moves on, generations change. It's almost like all of the riders now who are linked to Austria, aside from Hurlings, Prado's outgoing, are kind of not as deep in the foundations where they have the pull to be like, no, for instance, if they said to Vial, you're going to Gas, he would have probably said, no, I don't want to. And then they would have gone, okay.
Yeah, it's and more than the brand, like I was saying earlier, it's about the team. And, if they say, well, actually, you're going to have to move to Italy now and work with the Decali setup, principally, that might be something that doesn't appeal to, say, Kai de Wolf. But I think you've been discussing it recently with Kellen on your other podcast, but there is this widening chasm in MXGP where you have the top tier riders in the Premier class getting older with fewer seasons remaining. And then you have the latest kind of crop coming through in MX2 who are pretty young and they don't need to jump out of the class yet. So you have this little chasm. And I think where the interesting point of MXGP currently for the next 2 to 3 years in the short term is like what riders could suddenly come in and shake things up. And that's when you start to look at the AMA series and think, well, what would a Justin Barcia do to this? Or what would Jason Anderson do to this? Or, if Chase Sexton becomes bored of, racing Supercross, could he come in and really sort of like change the demographic of the result sheets? That's I think that's probably the interesting thing.
I actually had a conversation with Chase earlier this year, and I said, if you ever go to MXGP, I will be so mad. I'll be so angry. Like, that'll really piss me off. Because
why?
Oh, look, all of Lewis's friends are going to go to the place where he left. Like I need more of them to come here.
Yeah, but imagine how happy Jeremy and Ben Watson are going to be, and and Yargo.
Yargo. It's throwing me for a loop. Right. Rattling on. Brian Boger's great job. Benoit Patrel, great job. Valentin Guillot, more of the same from him. This
But
really.
Can I? No, I'm interrupting you. That's quickly the sort of the caliber rider I'm talking about, and like props to those guys because they're still cutting it. They're still able to set the standard for being a top 10 MXGP rider. But you have to look at the careers of Brian and also Benoit and Valentin and say, how many years have you got left, guys, being able to sort of get near the top 5 in MXGP? So that's they're sort of the examples I'm talking about. Guadagnini was 10th. Kevin Horgmo is sort of one of those strange examples of someone who's come into the he's new to the class and is finding his feet, and he'll be another one to sort of watch in the next season or two to see if he can stay the course.
But also, I would argue that I believe that in a boardroom somewhere, these manufacturers, although Kevin Horgmo may seem like a logical choice, using him as an example to a broader point, he seems like a logical choice. I don't believe they can get motivated to like, okay, let's go racing with Kevin Horgmo, because of past results, maybe reputation, not reputation, marketing value, better word for that I'm missing, and all of that stuff. I don't feel like these manufacturers can get. It doesn't have the same appeal as like 10 years ago when there was Prado, blah blah blah, all of these riders on the table, and it was like, that's a great signing. That's a great signing.
Yeah, but Horgmo's not sort of that generational talent, of course, but he would be a good second rider to give a factory chance to. If you're HRC and you have to re-sign Tim Geiger for another 3 years on a big money deal, you might think, okay, Horgmo could be a decent second rider. And I don't really know Kevin that well, but perhaps he's great when it comes to technical feedback and sensitivity with a motorcycle. He could, not only be a competitor, but also somebody that could assist the factory setup in terms of developing their technology. So there's also that which you should consider.
Yeah, I mean, this is where HRC are sitting pretty, because Geiser will be around for, I would presume, 4 to 5 years more at least. And then Fernandez is very capable as a next guy. He will be around for a long time. And when these guys move out, especially, he should be a podium regular. So HRC must be sat back and watching this and be like, cool, we dodged a bullet there, didn't we?
Also, I mean, a question for you, because Tim is young enough to still be a flagship rider in MXGP, like you said, for the next half a decade. You would say Jeffrey Herlings has got 1 more year as a Red Bull KTM rider. Could you see guys just suddenly leaping out of Honda for the first time in 10 or 11 years and becoming, like Chase did and joining KTM? Or I can't see him joining somebody like Kawasaki or another Japanese team. I could see him being headhunted and being the new sort of star figure for KTM, though.
Yeah, I said this to someone earlier this year at Honda. If I'm KTM, the wise move is to just offer Tim a shit ton of money and see if it sticks. Because if you look at the layout of the class, that is the logical move that is almost guaranteed success. Everything else is kind of not very exciting, not guarantee. What are we doing? We're kind of just messing around here, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that Tim would ever do it. His Instagram is Happy Rider, Fast Rider. And I believe that very much comes from the ecosystem within HRC, which is built around him. It's very much a family team. So I do not ever believe that Tim will leave Honda. But if I'm KTM, I'm taking a shot. For sure, I'm taking a shot.
Yeah. I mean, all you have to do is Honda want to pay him, pick a number, 2.5 million or 3 million, for 3 years. Then all KTM have to do is get a bigger checkbook, and that's it.
From what I know, I believe Geiser's salary is around 2.9, 2.8 maybe. That's what I believe I've figured out. But
I'd heard something similar. But obviously it's a multi-year thing, and there's all sorts of other sort of connotations on that. But I don't know, maybe we'll get a message from someone in Honda saying we're way off.
I know one guy who won't be messaging me. Um, well done to everyone in MXGP. You all did really well. Proud of you all. This result sheet screams injuries are coming a little bit. You know, as I said, Patrell
Yeah.
8th, Guio 9th. Like, it screams we're losing, guys. But well done to everyone. You all did really well. And well done to All Balls Racing, who continue to be amazing. The All Balls Racing Group is a combination of the finest aftermarket power sports brands from across the US and Europe, combining OEM level engineering and design capabilities with a world-class supply chain makes them the largest global supplier of critical aftermarket hard parts for the power sports industry. You can trust the All Balls Racing Group to provide the exact fitment and the best quality in the industry at a price that fits your budget. They, All Balls Racing, have everything to keep you running. Thank you to All Balls Racing, EVS Sports, and of course Polosport. We heard from them earlier. MX2 time, similar to last year, Lucas Coenen is catching fire around mid-season. His third GP win in a row, his fifth moto win in a row. He's not really making the type of ground in the championship that you would expect because Kai de Wolf has been nipping at his heels. But certainly this is a warning shot to his teammate that I'm not going to go quietly. And although you have a 59-point lead, I'm gonna be in this, and I'm gonna keep knocking away until I get that down. So it's gonna be a fascinating dynamic how this plays out.
Yeah, and it was the last time I saw Lucas actually was a week before last. He was at the Catalan MotoGP. Apparently Kai was there as well, but I didn't see him. I'm not sure if Sasha was there, but yeah, I mean, he came to check out the road racing. He's been there before. I think I saw him at Valencia at the end of last year, and obviously taking some inspiration, Lewis, for the speed because Kuhnen's riding at the moment is great. Sort of minimal mistakes. He seems to be more focused. I don't know what changes he's made, but it's certainly worked in terms of his form. And, you know, if I was Kai de Wolf, I'd be thinking, shit, you know, how do I beat this guy?
I would agree with that. I believe that it's quite harmonious under the Nissan Husqvarna factory racing awning. But realistically, the championship is gonna go like if the championship is not won by Nissan, something serious has happened, right? Like we're at the point where this has to go to Nissan in some way.
Yeah, this is the season they've been, I think, working towards for maybe 2 to 3 years. Maybe 3 years is a bit too much. But I think we still have to see a bit of a charge for. I think for Liam Everts was a bit disappointed with his riding to go 777 at the weekend, and maybe expected a bit more of him from in those conditions. Andrea Damo as well is kind of blowing a little bit hot and cold in terms of having one strong motor and another one where you think, you know, cut the errors out and you're going to be there. But they're sort of the only sort of really other strong contenders. And Lagenfelder, of course, was at his home GP. You know, he got on the podium, but he needs to start beating the Huskies as well.
Liam Everts is 92 points down. So that's too much. It's over. It's over for the KTM team and their title hopes, I do believe. Lagenfelder can still get in this, but he actually needs to beat the Husqvarna riders, which is proving to be troublesome. Actually quite ominous that the last three motos, the top three has been exactly the same. Coenen, de Wolf, Lagenfelder. I believe that is a real example of where this championship is going, and actually in the exact order, maybe. Yeah. It's weird. It's not weird. It's commendable that Kai de Wolf has won just one race in the last 4 GPs, that being Germany's qualifying race, and yet he hasn't panicked, because I really would have thought that Kai would have been the rider that needs to win to kind of justify his position to himself. But he seems to be very much in championship mode and championship management, not management, because that makes it sound like he's already backing into this. But, you know, seems to have an eye on the bigger picture, which I would have doubted his ability to do.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of tracks or occasions as well coming up where he needs to make hay and, you know, beat Lucas. I mean, maybe the double in Indonesia, which, you know, was recently announced going to happen in Lombok, both of those races. The island, you know, of course, where MotoGP happens as well, and they seem to be particularly proactive when it comes to promotion of the territory and all the sporting activities that happen there. I think just that sort of maybe a bit more experience, a bit more age in those conditions, he has to really try and profit and take some points away from Lucas there, because then when we come back to Europe, you're going to have venues like Lommel, which will be good for Kai too, but then, you know, a couple of weird ones like, you know, Lockett and Turkey as well, which could go either way. But yeah, I think Kai's been riding pretty much the perfect season so far in terms of, you know, not getting worried when he sees his teammates sprinting away and just making sure that he's right behind, minimizing the damage. But isn't it curious that, Lewis, one other thing I noticed at the weekend, I just thought, how many Austrian built bikes are there? I mean, then I went and looked it up, and, you know, we've had only 3 appearances on the podium all season from Japanese bikes. I mean, Thibaut Benistan, I think, it's been there once or twice, and then
Elzinger,
the other January, Elzinger, yes, you know, bursting through as well. And it's just, compared to recent years when Jago Gertz was making sure that Yamaha were, you know, one of the main sort of protagonists in MX2, and then you had now and again a Kawasaki popping up, and then also Fernandez did his best with the underpowered Honda. It's just, I mean, Zanucci, you have to give him some credit for trying to work his way back to sort of fitness and form. But you know, it's just it's strange to see it sort of being a Pyra Mobility Group Championship.
well, yeah, top 5 riders in a championship are Austrian bikes, and the gap from Adamo in 5th to Harrop in 6th is quite the gulf. So this is really the poster season for Austria of like, look at us, we're great. And if Prado can, or Hurlings can clinch MXGP as well, then especially so. One more thing on the Stan boys. Latvia is going to be good because they're both sand riders. They're both going to want to win that GP. They're both going to believe they can win that GP. If there's going to be fireworks, it could be in Latvia, because I believe they will both be sprinting away from the field and it will be intense.
Yes, I think also Lommel is a big one. They're both going to want to have that scalp. You know, it's the team's home GP as well. And, you know, they must have done enough laps around that place. So I think that's going to be a bit of a high point when it comes to this championship duel.
We spoke about Lagenfelder. Just, he's there, but he's not quite there. And some of us tipped him to win. I think there's a screenshot of a message I sent pre-season where I said that Lagenfelder will win 10 of the GPs at least. And
you've cursed him.
And we're quickly approaching a point where he has to win out for me to be right, which is concerning. But yeah, he's just there, but he's not. I mean, he's still coming back from his collarbone injury. He's there. He's certainly great. He's just missing 1%, and I don't know what that is. Although, have his starts gone away a little bit? Was he not more of a whole shot man in the past?
I mean, he seems to get the starts in Germany.
Yeah, I'm talking more generally, I guess.
Right.
Adamo 4th, one of his better GPs. And to reiterate what I said previously, I just believe this is his level. I'm not losing my mind on this.
Well, he slipped off in the second moto, and finishing 6th meant he just dropped off the podium. I mean, it should have been another podium finish.
So how long is his KTM contract?
I have no idea.
I believe he extended.
I don't think he renewed.
He extended in the middle of last year, didn't he?
I seem to remember multi-year deals, so I don't know if it's 2 years or 2+1. But I mean, he made no secret of the fact that he was struggling a little bit with the setup of the 250 pre-season. I think that might have been down to suspension. But yeah, I mean, he seems to be sort of finding that sort of consistency. The problem is, like you said, Lewis, he's too far behind in the championship already now. He's going to need some sort of misfortune to strike the others to be able to close the gap.
But realistically, I'm not a hater. I'm just realistic. De Wolf, Coenen, and Lagenfelder are better riders. They just are. And I'm sure.
Well, they're in better form. I mean, they're posting better results.
I believe Pitt would even agree with me. I'm going to try and interview Pitt in Majora, by the way. Never spoken to him in person, believe it or not.
Oh, I don't know if he'll be there, but
that could prove.
I guess he should be.
That could make it troublesome, but hey ho. Also,
we'll just ring him up.
You know, I've got a number 1 pass for Majora.
What do you mean a number 1?
A number 1.
So you're going as a VIP guest?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How and why?
Yep. Number 1 pass confirmed, Adam. Quite
But
an
how and
upgrade
why?
from what number's media? 3?
Yeah, I
Yep,
think so.
quite the upgrade from where I've been in the past.
Well, the people who were on the top deck of the Titanic, okay, maybe they managed to survive, but the people down on the third deck were having a better party.
Well, I don't think that I'm going to be welcome in that party if certain people have their way. So, actually, in front gave me the number 1 for my own safety. They said, "Here, we do not need you. We do not need you dying at the GP."
It's like solitary confinement.
Essentially.
Just banish him. But what does that even mean? I mean, why would you want a number 1 when you could have a media pass?
I've got a media pass as well.
Oh, you're just being selfish now.
I'm collecting them like Pokemon. Yeah. And 1 + 3 is 4. So actually, I'm a 4, which actually is worse. So yeah.
Well, just when you're on top of the hill at Majora in that little villa with the swimming pool and all the VIP food, just make sure you wave down at us poor people, okay?
Well, thanks to Dan. Thank you to Dan. No, it actually wasn't Dan. I think it's confirmed, but I believe JT hooked us up via Fly Racing.
Ah, right, okay. So that's the real reason. I was gonna say, maybe you're just getting on the Steve Mathis trend of complaining about everything until it suddenly turns around and people throw things at you for free and want to treat you nicely.
No one cares about Lewis. No one cares about Lewis.
Right, okay.
Lewis is irrelevant and kind of annoying, and to be honest, I hate him just as much as everyone else.
You're you're like an alter sort of identity, an alter ego, like a sort of Slim Shady.
Yes, exactly.
Right, okay.
Where were we? Elzinga, that was one of Elzinga's better rides.
Yeah.
His podium came in the mud, so that was arguably his best GP in the dry. He seems to be complaining about his long legs a lot. I can sympathize, but he seems to be struggling to get his long legs out of the way in deep ruts. Harrop has been, Harrop's been quiet recently, but this is still solid for Triumph. He's there, floating around the top 5. I don't believe. Okay, podium at round 1 caused expectations to skyrocket, but this is fine. Yeah. This is right where you'd expect him to be.
One of the things that I want to do first off in Majora is go and speak to Vincent at Triumph and find out how they're feeling about the bike and, whether they're still in a development process or the base setting is fixed and now they're just depending on the riders. Again, you don't see any Triumphs really vying for whole shots every week. So maybe that's something else they need to address, but it's all normal, I guess. They're less than halfway through their first season.
I have it from a very, very, very good source. Triumph, advantage, handling and agility. Disadvantage, it's slightly underpowered compared to the fastest 250s. So
well, then on a track like Teutschenthal, you're screwed.
But that's to your point about the starts. I believe that's where it comes from. Everts had an off day, as you mentioned. Oriol Oliver is back to relevance, and he was kind of a revelation last year, or was it the year before? He's kind of been popping up now and again. I honestly believe he's worth a team giving a shot to. I don't know what kind of team, but I believe there's some sort of potential there.
I don't know much about him.
He's Spanish.
I can't comment. Yeah, he rides with the same number as Justin Barcia, so maybe he could have a similar kind of impact on the results.
I'm pretty sure you do not pronounce his name as Oriol, but that's what...
Yeah, no, it's right. You're spot on, Oriol.
Look at me. I retract what I said about Lewis being annoying and kind of an idiot.
Yeah.
Right, before we go...
Yeah, I know I've got the standings of the Grand Prix open in front of me, and I want you to try to pronounce the name of the rider that finished in 10th.
Well, about 10 minutes ago, I saw him and I was like, oh, when we get there, we need to talk about him. But I was like, I genuinely don't know how to say his name. But okay, we'll do this. So Quentin Prugneres, I think it's Prugneres.
Maybe the G is silent.
I think it would be. Quentin Prugneres, he was, look, FNH isn't quite the FNH from the past this year. They're on black bikes for one, which kind of is a immediate sign that all is not well. And going racing with just Prelineres, in the MX2 class was kind of a worrying stance to take preseason, but he's kind of coming around. He was solid in Portugal, solid in France, and now solid again. 10th in the championship. To be honest, I would never have thought that he would enter the top 10. So I don't know if we give Mark Deruva credit for this again.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there seems to be something there. We should get Mark on this podcast. I don't know why I've not considered that.
Well, we only usually do like an hour. I mean, if we're going to stretch to 3, that might be a different kind of. We might have to do a 2-parter.
I also imagine it to be really hard work getting him A, on time, B, on Zoom, C, with headphones, D, with a landscape phone. So, yeah.
E, not going off on full scale rants, but he would have some good stories. I still have his book on my shelf and I haven't read it yet. So I must.
It was such a good book. Such a good book.
I know Tim who wrote it. I mean, he's a good journalist, so I'm sure it's good. But yeah, it's on the pile. I need to get my own bloody book written first.
Yeah, how is that going?
That's okay.
Is it
chipping
on
away
track?
day by day? Yes. I mean, it has to be finished by October, but I'm a little bit worried. I need to get really get moving with it.
Okay,
so.
well, we better figure out the end of this podcast. So before we go, one final point. 2 final points. The first being EVS Sports, the original protective gear company. EVS has been protecting champions and riders for almost 40 years and do not plan to stop anytime soon. What started out as one knee brace has evolved into a full line of protective gear to help keep riders safe while they do what they love. Check out evs-sports.com to see the same protective gear that pros RJ Hampshire, Kyle Chisholm, and Travis Pastrana all wear every day. Thank you to EVS Sports, All Balls Racing, and Polisport. I feel like EVS needs some MXGP riders. Maybe that's a path that I can go down to help. Final point: EMX 250. Gavin Towers, Star Racing's American amateur, decided to take the path less traveled and give MXGP a shot. He essentially had 2 options. One was stay in America as a Star Racing amateur. The other was go to Europe. He felt like remaining as an amateur would be cherry picking, sandbagging, etc., etc. So he decided to jump into EMX 250. And to be honest, I did not expect it to go that well. 6'2" in the motos, and yeah.
But he's good, right? I mean, I think I saw him race at A2. I thought he was pretty fast. He seems like the real deal.
He's fast but crashy.
Okay. Well, if he come through Teutschenthal with a 6'2", then there is big potential.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really surprised. And I know there are plans to put him on an MX2 bike at some point, wherever that is. Maybe Indonesia, who knows? But if I was him, I would be pushing for that now. I think there's a lot to be said about, if you look through history, a lot of time the rookies do their best in their first race, and then there's a slump. I think there's a lot to be said about the naivety that comes with your first race and being green to everything. So I would reckon it would be better to put him in MX2 while he still maintains that naivety, maybe a bit of an ego, you know?
I disagree.
Okay.
I think it'd be really good for him to finish out the rest of the European 250 Championship just to get a handle on what life is like overseas, as well as the tracks, as well as the way that the GP scene works. And then, you know, if he's up for it, probably not, because when you're that sort of proficient at Supercross already, then, you know, stay in the US. But, you know, an MX2 campaign would be the next step. I mean, we've seen riders like Darren Senai. If I apologize if I murdered that name.
Senai.
I can't even remember. Senai, that's it.
Yes,
Sorry, Darren.
I get to correct
really
you
well
for once.
He did really well in the MX 250, and then you had riders such as, say, Conrad Moos, who was, you know, really doing well in the MX 250 and jumped out too early into MX2 and got swallowed up by a class at the time was pretty competitive. So I think, you know, to stay in the MX 250, enjoy the wins, enjoy the experiences, and you will go back with an appreciation for the technical level of MXGP and how kind of, I want to say shitty, but in a positive way, you know, how difficult and it actually can be, because then you'll go back to some American tracks and think, well, this is lush, you know. I can remember being in Lockett and it's just, you know, riding on marbles, and here it's a breeze. So yeah, stay there.
I just don't know what his long-term plan is. I don't know if he wants to go back to America at the end of this year, or if he would be happy to spend 4 years in MX2 or Europe in some kind. He's already 20, so you know it's not like he's got a lot of time on his side.
Yeah.
One more quick point that I feel like we should bring up.
I have 3 more quick points
Okay,
to
you
finish
go
the
then.
podcast. Me first?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to say how cool it was to see like a really chock full gate in the MXGP class in Germany. You know, I think there was actually 40 riders starting the motos, or at least 39. And, you know, that's good because obviously it's a good aspect for the sport, but then also, you know, it just places extra value on a GP point when they're going down from first to 20th position. You know, the fact that you're having to fight for those world championship points just gives them extra value. I mean, that's how it should be. And in fact, I would even support a campaign to make points down to say 15th. You know, make Grand Prix points great again. There you go. So that's my first point. The second one, Lewis, is of course like we said, it's the Latvian Grand Prix next week, which can be extremely scary when you see it on TV, just to see how fast these guys are going in that terrain and on that track. I recommend everybody just to tune in, you know, get logged in or whatever app or way you watched MXGP and check that one out. And my final point was, I was really busy last weekend working, like I said, in Italy for the MotoGP. I had the MXGP on my iPad on this tiny little desk that was very uncomfortable to work in for 4 days. And the one moment in between, I think it was Moto 2 and MotoGP, I gave my full attention to the iPad. And the first thing that popped up from the MXGP TV presentation was a feature on Kevin Bruman.
What is going
on? When he saw him, Lewis, I had a big smile on my face and I thought of you instantly.
I didn't see this. What is going on? What does Kevin Bruman have over in front? Is he got photos or spy papers or?
No, I mean, it was just his turn, I think, for the team report. But I mean, he didn't get any points in Germany whatsoever. Honest. But I just thought that the timing was impeccable. Or Kevin.
I have no words, but to rattle through your points, completely back you on making MXGP points down to top 15. I would even accept top 10, to be honest.
Ooh, okay.
Or maybe top 12, somewhere in the middle. Latvia, as everyone knows, my favorite race of the year. I absolutely love Latvia. I would move to Latvia if I could. That's a lie. Sounds good. Also, the Latvian Sports Ministry follows me on Twitter, and every year when they like my tweets, I dream that they're going to sponsor me as like an honorary Latvian.
They're going to knight you.
Yeah, but they never do.
The keys to Riga. Oh, okay.
They never do. And finally, the team reports need to go. That we're done with the team reports. We've done those.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a 20-year-old concept, and it was a way just to give a team some exposure back. I mean, let's be honest. When else are you going to see Kevin Bruman in the TV broadcast? And except when he's doing onboard laps, or you know, pre-grid interviews.
Well, actually, it turns out you'll see Kevin Bruman quite a lot, surprisingly.
Yeah. Okay. Kevin or his peers. You know, I think you have to. It was Infront's way of giving something back to the teams and some marketing exposure, and you could argue, does it deserve a place now in live TV broadcast when it could be something that lives on YouTube? I mean, it could have its own channel. I mean, check out MXGP Privateers or find out the cool stories of people further down in the gate. I mean, that's a concept I think people might get behind.
Yeah, so, it's 2024. Hey, teams, we're taking away your team report and replacing it with social media support. There we go. My final quick point that I feel like we should mention, there was WMX, almost said WSX drama, by my brain just automatically goes there. There was WMX drama. So I guess Lynn Volk won the second moto and then got docked because she passed a back marker on a waved yellow, which is I'm surprised this has never come up before, but I feel like it goes. I guess technically it is somewhat the rule, but then it's never been the rule before. Like, you've always been allowed to pass lapped riders.
No disrespect, but I'm lost already with this little crusade you're going. All I know from WMX in Germany is that Larissa Papenmeier won her home GP, and I think Larissa was in maybe the first or second edition of the World Championship, the Women's World Championship, which was quite cool to see. So she's still racing, she's still fast. But yeah, I got no comeback about a yellow flag and passing.
Well, I know nothing about this, so let me just quickly read what Lynn said on Instagram. They told me I got a 2-position penalty because there were waved yellow flags on an uphill and I passed a lapped rider. Yes, a lapped rider. I was riding on my own, not battling for a position. I was just trying to not get stuck or crash. There's a... you know what? I'm not going to do it. No, I am going to do it. There's a slogan for WMX. But I think that's what the FIM wanted me to do, to make sure there was another yellow flag on the track. And I think we've had enough during the second moto. So yeah, more grey area that needs to be addressed, essentially.
But then isn't the rule, I mean, maybe we should look it up, is the rule that you're not allowed to overtake anyone of any position on the track?
I mean, there
maybe
must have... There has... I would be very surprised if I've gone my whole life without noticing the fact that leading riders don't pass lapped riders on yellow flags. I feel like that's just presumed that that's okay. But maybe we shouldn't presume or assume, because when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Anyway.
Until Latvia.
I love Latvia. Just sad that Paul's Jonas won't be there. But anyway. I was also trying to get Paul's to do an AMA National, but that won't happen now either. Sad.
Crusher of dreams.
Yep. Thank you to Polosport, All Balls Racing, and EVS for their support of this podcast, as per usual. Thank you to everyone for listening. We appreciate your support. This is the first of a triple header. Latvia will be business as usual. Majora will not, but in a good way. So that's something to look forward to. We will be back in 7 days' time to discuss round 9. Thank you for listening, and we will see you then.